Are you not ready?
Go ahead and start.
All right, welcome everybody. It's 6:33 p.m. I'll call this meeting to order. If you would please stand with me and repeat the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. Rory, would you call roll, please?
Absolutely. Councilmember Glover.
Here.
Billings. Here. Gettle.
Here.
Brown.
Here.
And Robinson. Here.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, we'll hear from Chief Brad Larson for the Unified Fire Report.
Good evening, council members, Mr. Mayor, city staff. It's a pleasure to be with you tonight. Congratulations to a new council member of Billings, and pleasure to meet you earlier today. And congratulations to our other two council members being sworn in again. Really look forward to seeing the great things that can be accomplished in the coming year. The great things that you can do for the citizens of this great community of Midvale. It's always my pleasure to come here and present a report of the activities of Unified Fire Authority and to attend the senior staff meetings, except for today. Sorry about that, Matt. I was at UFA command staff meeting. But I look forward to that and working with the city staff and this community a great deal. Just quickly, our EMS division, which is our emergency management services division, they have a CPR class that they're cranking up. It's a CPR certification course. They're going to move it around the service area for UFA. And the schedule and sign up are available on the UFA website. I'll make sure and get that to Laura so that you have access to it. If your municipality or groups would like to host a session in the next fiscal year, you can let them know. The medical division chief is Rob Ayers. And we should be able to make that happen. As a reminder, the CPR municipalities letter is attached as a guidance for the liaisons. And I have a copy of that also, so I can make that available. The safety message for this month, I'll just go through that quickly and then talk a little bit about the cruise activities the last little bit. The safety message is about winter storms and home fires. We want to remind the residents of some of the fire safety tips to keep in mind during the winter season. A fact is that there are more home fires in the winter than any other season. We're asking that families check all their smoke alarms at least once a month and install a carbon monoxide detector in your home. Plan with your family 2 ways to get out of the home quickly in case of an emergency. And keep your driveway and walkways clear of ice and snow to provide easy exits and allow the crews to have access to your home quickly. Make sure your house number is easily visible from the street. Be a good neighbor and check on those around you who may need help. Generators, remember, should only be used outdoors. Keep flashlights and blankets on hand in case the power goes out, and extra batteries for easy reach. If the heat stops working, use extra layers and clothes to keep warm. If you're using a portable heater, please keep that at least 3 feet away from anything that can burn, and turn it off when sleeping. I went through those because I think that is a really critical message. And we're working really hard to get more messages out to our communities in a community risk reduction effort. And I don't know if getting these messages out for over the past years had anything to do with it, but our crews had 80 calls less this last holiday season than last year, which is significant. So we did have a few fires before that, unfortunately, but we just hope that our citizens can keep safe and remember some of these safety points and keep those statistics coming down. The crew said that they noticed that they were steady during the day and then slowed down in the evening, and into the morning hours it was a lot slower than normal, which we're really grateful for. I spoke with Captain Chad Green today. They've had a couple of elderly citizens stop by and request help for smoke detector installation in their home, which they've done, and they're more than happy to do. So if there are citizens, especially the elderly, that need help with that, please feel free to contact our office or the crews. They'll be more than happy to help out with that.
Is there a best way, if somebody wanted to do that, to contact crews or?
A couple of individuals just stopped by, but that's kind of hit or miss if they're out on a run or something. They can always call our main office number. The citizens at Midvale, probably our main office number, the 743 number, would be the best number to contact, and they can put them in touch with the right person to make that happen, which they'll probably refer them to me, which is great. So we can make that happen if that's needed. So I did have a little bit of a joke, and I ran it by Chief Thomas, and I didn't get the reaction out of him that I wanted. And I'm like, I'm not going to say that. And he goes, you can sell a bad joke, shoot it out anyway. So that's the joke. So anyway.
I think he was right.
Thanks, Chief Thomas. So any questions for me?
Not saying any.
Okay,
Thanks, Chief.
thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, we'll move into public comments for the evening. Any person wishing to comment on any item not otherwise scheduled for a public hearing on the agenda tonight may address the city council at this time by stepping to the microphone and stating their name for the record. Do we have any public comments? Seeing none, we'll move into reports. For me, just again, want to say congrats, Councilmember Billings. Excited to have you here. And then congrats on the re-election of Councilmember Glover and Councilmember Robinson. It's been great serving with the two of you over the last 2 years. Excited to serve with you over the next 2 years. So appreciate having you here. And truly all the work that I know that goes into campaigning. It's a lot of time away from friends and family. And this job will just continue some of that, but I hope that it is rewarding and exciting for you. Also excited about this new year. I've been thinking about this a lot and how this last year was kind of hectic, and I keep thinking, ooh, this new year, it's going to be, I want a positive year. And then I think of all the things that we have to do and work on, especially continuing the UPD reorganization and all the work we have to do to try to secure our community a new rec center. So I am both exhausted and very excited for what this year holds, and just excited to be here with all of you. With that, Councilmember Glover.
I'd just like to thank all our citizens for going out into the election. I am thankful that I have the opportunity to serve and be able to do the best I can to help our citizens in the city of Midvale. And I'd like to wish everybody a happy new year. That's it, Mayor.
Okay, Councilmember Billings.
I just wanted to say a quick thank you to the residents of Midvale and in District 1. They were so warm and welcoming through my campaign, and I'm really excited to get to work for them. I understand that this position, the commitment that is required for this, and I do promise to do the best that I can in this position. So just a thank you there again. I'm also really excited to start working with the council and the Midvale city staff, and I'm ready to get to work. Thanks so much.
Thanks. Councilmember Gettle.
Thanks, Mayor. I do want to note that this is 6 years to the day that Councilmember Brown and I started. So I've been sitting next to Paul Glover here for 6 years, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I wanted to say Happy New Year to everyone. We had quite a flurry of activity to end the year, but I think our city has emerged stronger than ever. And so I want to thank city staff and you, Mayor, as well for a lot of the hard work that you guys put into some issues that arose in the past few weeks. Other than that, I also want to congratulate and welcome new council member Bonnie Billings. I know in getting to know Bonnie much better over the past few months, I think she's going to be a wonderful addition to the council. And also to Councilmember Robinson and Councilmember Paul Glover for their victories as well. And I just want to note, as long as Bryant and I have been here, we've never had 2 women council members, and I think that that is an amazing thing for our city. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Brown?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I just want to remind everyone that I was sworn in before Dustin, so I'm actually the second most tenured council member by like 7 minutes or so. So that's the order of seniority here. Jokes aside, congratulations to the new council member for winning your race, and for those repeating. You know, it's been great watching you two serve Midvale and continue to do so, and I'm sure we'll have a lot of great times going forward. I'm sure the RDA meetings will be just as they always are, even without Quinn here. Lastly, this is maybe more for the police chief, but we keep getting reports of shootings in the Copper Rec area, and obviously any sort of shooting is bad for the community and dangerous. But it's especially concerning when it's sort of sandwiched between a school and a rec center where, kids go, right? And any of these sort of drive-bys or anything along those lines cause, substantial heartache for parents, right? So I keep, getting a lot of references for it. And what I always tell people, this is for everyone in Midvale, or if you're not even from Midvale, people visiting, is if you hear gunshots, do not post it on social media or email anyone about it. Well, you can eventually, but always call, because I think, maybe they won't be able to figure out who that was or do something in, at that exact moment, but that's how cops sort of maybe build profiles and stuff to help patrol and whatever along those lines. And so, we have to do better and have to figure out what's going on, because it's becoming more and more frequent. They might not always be gunshots, right? They could be cars backfiring or something, but there's been some recent evidence that they are, and I want to make sure we're just always talking about it, because I had a couple parents that are like, my kids can't even go outside anymore, and that's not what we want Midvale to be about, and we need to figure out a way to maybe work on that. And it's a little bit gloom, but I want to make sure those people know we're thinking about them.
Agreed. Thank you. Councilmember Robinson?
Thanks, Mayor. First, I just want to say welcome to Bonnie. I'm extremely excited to have her up here with us. And congratulations to Paul down there in his hard-fought race. And that I'm very excited to be working with the city staff for another 4 years. So thank you.
Thank you. City Manager Dahl?
Sure. First, also, just want to wish everyone a Happy New Year. We've got a lot of great things to be working on this year that will improve and benefit the community, and I look forward to working with all the council members on that. Some of those things that will benefit the community, though, do start off as these challenges that, like Councilmember Brown brought up, and let's connect on, I know the area you're talking about, but you said the particular family that doesn't want their kids to go outside. Let's connect on where that is specifically and stuff. But as we work on improving those and some of the other projects that we have this year, I think we'll do great things for the community this year. Speaking of people who do great things for that community, I also want to welcome Councilmember Billings and also just express my thankfulness that we'll be having the opportunity to continue to work with Heidi and Paul going forward. And so that's a few things that I had this evening. I also wanted to, we have a new staff member, Erin Summers, who's in the back there. She is our new policy and project manager. Erin, you'll be seeing her sending you emails and checking in. There's a lot of projects that I've ended up working on for a variety of reasons. Sometimes when people leave, it just ended up with me, and I've been working on those projects now for years. And in order to sort of free me up on some of the larger organizational projects, it made sense. There's also a lot of policies that the council has been asking for over the course of the last year, and Erin will be the point person for working on those with legal and with myself in order to move some of those policies forward. Erin's been with us for about a month now, and anyways, and so we're excited to have her. And before she comes and presents on something in the future, I just wanted you guys to see her face and know her name. Thank you. And I think that is it. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. All right, moving on to the consent agenda. Just one item, consider minutes of November 30th and December 6th, 2023. Is there a motion to accept the consent agenda?
Mayor, I motion that we accept the consent agenda.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that? Rory, will you call roll?
Yes. Councilmember Glover,
Aye.
Gettle,
Yes.
Billings,
Yes.
Robinson,
Aye.
and Brown.
So now there's 3 yeses. I just want to make sure that that's clear. It's slowly taking over. Yes. I was very happy to hear that.
You missed Quinn.
I know, I heard.
I looked at you right when
It was
that
just
came
that.
out. I was like, I know Brian's gonna hear
I didn't even know this was a thing, so.
It's a thing.
It's a thing.
Welcome aboard. All right, that does pass with a few yeses and some ayes. All right, moving on to our first action item of the night. Consider resolution number 2024 R01, authorizing the conveyance and acceptance of the park area adjacent to Zion's (parentheses Jordan Bluffs), and we're going to hear from Adam Olson.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We discussed this about 2 weeks ago at your previous meeting. The park area, as shown on the screen, has been improved. It's been inspected and recommended for acceptance and conveyance to the city. The documents for conveyance are ready for signatures. Approval of this resolution would then authorize and allow that park to officially be open for public use. This, again, is just the first phase of a multi-phase park, which will ultimately consist of it will consist of 15 acres. And it will line kind of the western side, the top of that bluff area overlooking the Jordan River. This is just a closer view of that area. Again, everything that you see on here, all the improvements have been in. They've been inspected. There were multiple rounds of inspection to make sure that everything was as it should be, and staff was finally able to recommend approval. Again, this does comply with the amended and restated Master Development Agreement. Section 331 outlines the process for acceptance and conveyance, and that has been followed. And with that, there's a recommended motion. I'm happy to answer any questions. We also have Dave Dennison here with Gardner, who is happy to answer any questions you may have as well.
Just a question on the planning materials. What type of warranty do we have that?
So everything.
Because right now, it's a little hard to tell if they're
Yes.
alive or not alive.
So one of the items that the Parks Department requested was that in the spring, that the warranty extend. And so if there are trees or bushes or whatnot that do not come out of dormancy in the winter, that those will be replaced, and that's been agreed to as well.
Okay.
Paul, sorry, just to add to that, they'll also test the irrigation system, the sprinkler system in the spring, so warranty issues are being
Yeah,
dealt
it's
with.
just a little hard this time of year to know exactly
Well, yeah.
what's going on.
And it really needs to go for more than, it needs to make it through a full winter, because as we saw from last winter, like 20 of the trees they planted are dead, right? Like along 78 and down that slope, I would say maybe 20, and they're still just dead there, right? And That's not necessarily anyone's fault, but you gotta remove them and replace them, otherwise it just looks bad. So I would like to make sure it goes through at least a winter cycle, because, you know, if you have one bad winter right after you plant, you know.
Yeah, I believe what they worked out with the Parks Department or Parks Division was that they would have a year warranty starting in the spring.
Okay.
And the other ones that you mentioned on 78, that area is going to be reworked and you will see new plantings there. So.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want them planting them tomorrow, right? It's
For sure. And the sprinkler, the whole irrigation system was inspected earlier in the fall before everything was shut down. That was a requirement that they walk through that, look at every station, look at every valve, make sure everything's working. And that was at the time, and then they said, okay, we're shutting it down, we're winterizing it. But in the spring, when we turn it back on, the representatives from Gardner will be there to walk through that and make sure everything is still functioning.
Thank you.
The one thing, and this is mostly for Laura, and we've chatted about this, is I want to make sure that in the spring we do some sort of grand opening for that park. It's not often that we are opening a new park in the city, and I think it's important that we actually celebrate that. And I think that'll be good to officially let our community know that that's open and usable.
It's also good to know, if you haven't been there, some of the best sunset viewing can be held there. On the swing, which I mentioned last time. Yes, I use the swings there. It's very fun. But there's just beautiful views of the sunset that you can look west and take a look at that. My only concern about this park, and again, I love the park, and every time I'm there, I'm surprised at the number of people who are already utilizing it. But just the slope, obviously, you know, once people get there and they look around and see the poor condition of the slopes right there, you know, it's not the best look, I don't think, because even if the park is beautiful, which it is, you know, if everything around that park is the slope, and then also even the area to the south, which is going to be developed eventually, is kind of a wasteland right now. So, you know, if you're there, look west. That's my recommendation.
Any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, I'd entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move that we approve resolution number 2024-R01, authorizing the mayor to formalize the acceptance and conveyance of the Jordan Bluffs Park area.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on that? Rory, will you call roll?
Yes, Councilmember Billings,
Yes.
Glover,
Aye.
Robinson,
Aye.
Brown,
Yes.
and Gettle.
Yes.
Okay, that passes. Thank you. All right, moving on to action item B, consider resolution number 2024-R02, authorizing the mayor to enter into a federal aid agreement between the Utah Department of Transportation and Midvale City for the reconstruction of the bridge over the Jordan and Salt Lake Canal located at approximately 80 East, 80th South.
Thank you, Mayor. It's good to be with the mayor and council members tonight. I bring before you opportunity that we've been given in cooperation with UDOT or from UDOT. The city was contacted by the Utah Department of Transportation some time ago regarding a project called the Bridge Formula Program, which is part of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. This program provides money to the states for the rehabilitation or replacement of bridges that are in poor condition and are not part of the federal aid system. Our bridge over the Jordan and Salt Lake Canal on about 80th South, or about 80th East and 80 East and on 80th South qualifies and was put on the list. UDOT is actually getting about $45 million a year for 5 years and have identified 90 bridges throughout the state. Fortunately, we are in the first round of this money. After gathering some preliminary information, UDOT is now ready to begin a design process. Our bridge is being grouped into one package with 4 bridges in the Sandy area and 1 bridge in Draper City. To get this process started, we need to enter into an agreement, into a federal aid agreement with UDOT, which outlines the responsibilities of both parties. UDOT will administer all the design and construction contracts. However, we will be able to provide input during all phases and be part of the process. UDOT will select one of their design firms, which have been pre-qualified, to do the design work, and will bid the project out using their typical process. The Bridge Formula program requires a 6.77% match from the local agency, which in our case amounts to $203,100. The federal aid agreement was vetted and developed by the federal government, of course, and with review and input from our state's Attorney General's office. Staff has also reviewed the agreement. I am asking for and appreciate your consideration of a suspension of the rules tonight so that you can act on this action tonight. Like I said, the local match is $203,100. We have earmarked that from our payment management funds. Prepared a recommended motion and recommend that you approve this resolution that will allow the mayor to enter into this agreement, which we can get back to UDOT and they can begin the selection process and start design work. The proposed schedule would be getting design work done this winter and spring, selecting a contractor, and then beginning work next fall. Obviously, the canal companies don't want you working around it when there's water in the canal, so probably work will begin after October, mid-October timeframe. Is there any questions that I can answer for you?
Okay.
If not, thank you very much.
Thank you. I'd entertain a motion.
Mayor, move that we suspend the rules and approve resolution number 2024-R02, a resolution authorizing the mayor to sign the federal aid agreement with UDOT for the reconstruction of the bridge over the Jordan and Salt Lake Canal located on 8000 South.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Councilmember Billings, I will just tell you that it is a rule that Keith has to wear a tie anytime he comes and asks for the rules to be suspended. So I see he's got a nice bolo tie on today, so.
We were wondering if that
counts.
meant more,
Or
if
just
that's
throw
less.
us off a little
Yeah.
bit.
Or is it 20, New Year's resolution, new ties? Yeah, okay.
Christmas gift. It's a nice
That's
gift.
the reason.
All right, any other further discussion? Rory, we call roll, please.
Yes, Councilmember Robinson.
Aye.
Brown.
Yes.
Gettle.
Yes.
Billings.
Yes.
And Glover.
Aye.
Hey, that passes, thank you. All right, we've got 3 discussion items tonight. First one, recommendations for naming of the Midvale City Community Coalition. Matt.
Good evening. Also, about a month ago, a little bit more than that, we hired a new coalition coordinator, Vanessa Guevara, who is the coalition coordinator. It's a position that Midvale City received direct funding for and is paying for that position. And I bring that up in that she would have been the one presenting this evening, but she, in a prearranged, being out of town, she isn't here tonight. But as we talk about this going forward, she'll be here to present this stuff. If you can't tell, with both Aaron and Vanessa, my goal is to have to come up here less to talk to all of you. Anyway, so about 18 months ago or so, a little bit more than that, but about that, the mayor and some others from Midvale City began working with representatives from Salt Lake County and other community groups to form what has been sort of called either like the Midvale Community Coalition, the Coalition to End Youth Violence, and it's had some different names. The thing that is sort of interesting about this group is that it always had city involvement, but sort of started as a community group. But over time, as we look at funding options and the most efficient way of sort of having that group work with the city is really to make it become a formal committee within the city. As you recall, towards the end of last year, we approved some new changes to the code that would allow us to formalize changes how we formalized a new committee. That was done both looking towards a future community council, but also as looking towards this group. The Coalition to End Youth Violence is one of many such groups throughout the state. And as the title says, it's primarily focused on some of the causes for youth violence within our community and how do we address those. It's our intent to come back to you with the bylaws within the next 3 or 4 meetings, but the coalition has adopted a Communities That Care framework for how the organization will run. We'll have to make sure that we get that framework to sort of unify with our bylaws. But essentially the CTC, Community That Cares, is a framework that is data-driven and has a variety or an order of steps that need to be completed in order to sort of continue on with that framework. One of those things is to look at what the community wants to officially name the organization. Now, if the organization remains separate, they would be able to decide what that name is, but because they're going to be a Midvale organization, Midvale committee, we thought it would be appropriate to come back to you with what the 2 top names are currently. There was a vote, there was a 1 vote difference on those, with Uplift Midvale being the number 1 choice and Midvale Grit being the second choice. Other examples of coalition names in the state include the North Davis Communities That Care. There's a variety of them that have a name that ends with that care. My favorite is the Wendover Youth Prevention Coalition.
Poor youth.
I do not think this means what they think it means. Reach for Hope, which is St. George, Linden Cares, and so anyway, so the 2 names that, like I said before, are Uplift Midvale and Midvale Grit, I just wanted to come up real quick, see if you had any issues with either of those names. We provide that feedback to the coalition, and then when we come back with the formal bylaws, we will just have that name included with that, and that'll formalize the name at that time. But that's the reason this is so long is just to remind you of where we're at with this group too. But the simple question is, do you have any beef with either of those names?
I personally don't like the grit one, Midvale Grit. I don't like that one. I think that unless it has Gritty, the Philadelphia Flyers mascot attached, but
wasn't sure where we were going with that one.
Yeah, yeah, I don't like that one. I think it just the word gritty. I understand being a gritty person and true grit, John Wayne, all of that. But I think gritty has, some sort of negative connotation to it. So Uplift Midvale, in my opinion, definitely is a better name. It also kind of gives you an idea of what this group is trying to do. You mentioned one of the names was something Cares, like Linden Cares or something like that. I think, something simple like that, Midvale Cares, would be a perfectly great name.
But you're saying if Uplift would be acceptable as well?
Yeah, no Midvale Grit, in my opinion, anyway.
And just so the council is aware, with this, there were 4 names brought to the coalition, and the coalition was able to vote. The 4 names were Midvale Cares, Midvale Empowers, Midvale Grit, Grit standing for Generating Resiliency, Igniting Transformation, and Uplift Midvale.
And so these 2 were the
Those
top
2
2
were the top
getters.
2. Yep.
Was that ranked choice?
I don't think so.
It was the throw papers down stair method, where the top one gets it. Never mind.
So that's just my opinion. Uplift Midvale then would be my choice of those 2.
Anyone else have any
I'll
thoughts,
agree
comments,
with
concerns?
Dustin, the grit doesn't quite get it for me. It doesn't really say what's happening at all, so.
Okay, great. I will take that guidance to them, and we'll finish up those bylaws and come back to you with that in the next 3 or 4 meetings.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm also the next item, so.
Yeah, just stay there. Okay, item B is board and committee assignments of Midvale City.
So this is just a discussion this evening to discuss the boards and committees, as the memo says, and most of you are aware, so I'm really looking at you, Bonnie. We are members of a variety of different organizations. Some of them we are actually members of. Some of them were invited to be sort of representatives of Midvale, but we aren't necessarily part of a member organization. Some of them are even less formal than that. A new addition to this that I don't think was in previous versions is we're starting to try to also include some of those internal groups that council members are part of. So for example, there's a mural, a broader mural committee, but then in previous meetings, we've identified which council members will be the members of that committee for different projects that come up. And so we're also listing that on there just so that we're all sort of clear on where we're at with that. The reason we're just discussing it is that this evening is that if there's anything that you particularly would like to be part of or not part of, we'll take down that information and we'll try to address it tonight so we can come back with the final version next week. The other thing, of course, is that Quinn is leaving several spots, and so we need to definitely make sure that we are appointing someone to take over those positions. So to start off, as you know, we're part of I should probably put the whole name up next time, UIA board. This is the Utah Infrastructure Agency. This is the sort of sister organization to Utopia, Utopia being the one that sort of manages the fiber optic network, and UIA is essentially the organization that takes on debt in order to build the infrastructure. And so they always meet one after the other when they do meet. And so Quinn was the alternate to Nate on the UIA board. Is there anyone that would be particularly interested on this one? In some ways, this is actually more exciting than Utopia because this is where all the bonding occurs, but which is super exciting. But does anyone have any interest in being that alternate? In this case, if no one wants to be for some reason, we can also just fill that with a staff member as an alternate. But does anyone particularly want to be the alternate on that?
I can.
Okay. Then Bryant has had the arduous task of being the alternate on Utopia. Then Unified Fire Authority Board, really, I don't think Paul has maybe once been that for you, or you made it to all of them. Unified
Either way,
Police.
I'm glad to do it, but if somebody else wants it, that's fine.
Okay. How about that? We'll just yell out and raise your hand if you want to be it. Is that? Sorry, I'm in a weird mood tonight. The Unified Police Department Board, of course, Mayor is the member on that. Same thing with Unified Fire District. Midvale Audit Committee. I don't think that, I forget, how do we make changes to that one?
I think we have to maybe do a resolution.
Okay.
The audit committee?
Yeah.
I was on it for my first 2 years. I think Heidi was. I think it's a very good committee for a new member, one person on it. I don't mean to like throw Bonnie under the bus. It's not that time consuming other than like one meeting, because there's like one meeting where you come in early, but you like see a lot more of it. That's the one I always suggest for new council members.
Yeah, I'd be interested.
Okay. Would either Paul or Heidi like to switch?
I
with Bonnie?
definitely can bow out. I've been on it like off and on for a lot of years.
Okay.
When is the next audit?
1 year.
When
Yeah.
the fiscal year ends. Yeah.
Okay.
We just barely met, so she'll have a whole
Yes.
year under her belt.
I remembered that, but I was for Bonnie's info, because we literally just talked about it, I think, at our last meeting.
It's probably a good time to do that. Okay, I've highlighted this one. Heidi is the representative for the community council. I've sort of just highlighted it to point out that it sort of means when it goes again. Midvale Arts Council, Bryant has been the liaison for that group. Harvest Days Committee, it's been Heidi. I did add on here the community members that are part of that group. So really, I mean, you guys decide on Heidi and get to vote on the chair, and then the mayor gets the appointment of the other members on that group. South Valley Reclamation, Glenn has been our representative there, and will be the chair this next year. That's what they said. Yeah, it's exciting. Jordan Valley Water Conservation, again, Glenn and Keith and Alan are participating in that. Trans-Jordan Landfill, we continue to have Kane be the member on there. I know he would like to be on there until the, not transfer station, transfer station, that's the word I was looking for, is completed. But if you guys would like to have further discussion on that, that's something that we can do as well.
Are they gonna do the breakfast again? They used to do a breakfast there, which
Breakfast.
sounds awful.
At the dump.
At the dump. But then COVID hit and they stopped. But I have never been more like, oh my goodness, between how we should recycle to like, respecting what happens and the future of, hey, we're gonna have to start shipping our garbage south. It's very good for the council members to go. Another one, I'm trying to not be like, Bonnie should go to this thing, but that's kind of what I'm gonna do. Dustin, we went, I think
It was
twice.
called Breakfast at the Dump, which probably
Yeah.
should be reworked.
Yeah, the branding was a little skeptical.
It was very informative.
I can reach out to Jaren and see if they've got plans.
Or
for
if
that.
they're gonna come here, and do a workshop.
Well, what I'm hearing is you guys would like to hear from Trans-Jordan.
Yeah, I think it's a once a year should be a good,
And they have been coming
Yeah.
out about once a year, yeah. So we'll keep that up.
I do have a question, Matt. You opened the door just slightly on that. And as nicely as possible, I understand Kane worked here many years and wants to continue on that. However, he doesn't work for Midvale City anymore. And so having him as the liaison there, I think it's a little strange to me to do it that way because he's not held to any kind of standard as far as like the city goes. He could be attending them or not. Do we get some report at least from him to say like?
Yeah, I believe he did come out.
Yeah,
last
He was
year.
here,
out,
once a year, and that's fine. But I'm sure they meet more than that.
Just for a little more context, I also attend basically every meeting.
Okay.
And Kane is doing a fabulous job, and he just wants to see it through.
Okay.
Garbage is in a very good place, and he's led that charge for a while.
As long as there's not any sort of like, I'm sure we're not liable in any way, but it's interesting to me to have someone representing us on a board who doesn't work here anymore.
Kane is not the only board member currently not an employee of their city, if that helps.
But it is your choice. And so and that's why I said it that way, is I don't want to make it sound like it is ironclad, but if that is something that I think from an administrative side, we think that he is representing us and has the background, again, particularly with everything, but particularly through this transfer station construction. And I think that's where we would sort of, when it's completed, we would look at that being the time when we would transition to someone else. That being said, if there's an interest in changing that, we could definitely do that.
What's the timeline? Do we know? When's the transfer station gonna be done?
It's scheduled to be completed this fall.
Oh, so for 8 or 9 more months?
Correct.
I wouldn't mind doing it afterwards. I find the topic interesting or whatever, but having his institutional knowledge doesn't necessarily bother me to get through there. But I do think changing afterwards makes sense because now there's a new needs, and he's not here to be involved in those discussion points.
And I didn't realize it was only within the next calendar year, this calendar year, that would be completed. So yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Maybe Glenn should be it afterwards.
Yeah.
But I'd like to be involved with it.
Yeah.
No matter what, Glenn's going to go anyway. So, I think it is worth discussing having a council member participate in that, I think, going forward. Glenn will always, whether he's an alternate or whatever, will attend those meetings. But I think that there is value in having a council member attend that as well.
And then when Glenn retires, he can just stay on and do it for us.
Until they build this south, the Saratoga Springs landfill. You can have that reason.
Chihuahua.
Look, if we make that a requirement, that'd be great. I don't want him to ever retire.
Yeah, it's fine. I'm okay with that. I was just wondering if it was going to be like another 2 or 3 years, then.
It's actually under construction currently, so.
Oh yeah, I've seen.
It will be a great thing when it's done for Midvale, because we can use it. those have to, I mean, we can use the trains, Jordan, but it's so inconvenient, you know, this will be great.
Historical Society, Paul was just put into that position this summer, recently. And then Community Building Community, that's typically been a mayor position. Mark, the mayor, has been on that. Mosquito abatement, it could never be anyone but Paul. But if someone really were interested, I guess that could happen. In fact, we don't participate in it a lot, but it is something that we're a member of. Utah League of Cities and Towns. This is one that they allow us 3 positions. It's historically been the mayor, the city manager, and then a council member who participate in that. Those meetings occur monthly throughout the year, but during the legislative session, the policy committee generally meets at noon on Mondays. You can zoom into those, but it's a pretty interesting thing to actually come in and be in person. So we are looking for a council member to fill that spot.
Can I add on that one?
Please do.
That's one where, I mean, really having a council member, whether it be virtually or in person, is pretty important, especially on mitigation funds. I mean, we have issues that are legislative issues that impact us a lot differently, and we've had to rally in there to get support from the other communities to have the league actually supporting or not supporting certain bills. So that is a place where our votes and advocacy really matter.
Can I make a pitch for Councilmember Billings on this role? Councilmember Billings has a ton of experience working with legislative policy, and I think she'd be great for that. Not to volunteer you, but I feel like you'd be great for that committee.
Yeah, I was looking at it today, and that was one that did stand out to me, so I'd be interested in that.
Does anyone want to fight for that?
I will. No.
Sorry.
He nominates her. I would like
Fight
to.
for that. Yeah, fight for that position. All right. All right, we'll put her on that one.
Is that quarterly, or how often does that committee meet?
Go ahead.
So it's weekly during the session, every Monday, and then monthly outside of the
Oh, okay.
session.
And almost always on a Monday at noon.
Yeah.
Okay. So then we got the Association of Government Councils. Heidi's been on that one for a bit. They don't meet too often though, right? Yeah. Council of Governments, this is typically a mayor position. Same thing with Conference of Mayors, similar but different. The Shelter of the Homeless Board, this is one that Quinn has been on. We've had some discussions about the mayor being the representative on that board. So just as a reminder, Shelter of the Homeless is the organization that actually owns many of the shelters, particularly those that are run by the Road Home. And so they have some influence and impact on homeless services, but largely it's just from sort of the real estate perspective.
I'll just add that Lori Hopkins, who's the executive director of the Shelter of the Homeless, has asked me if we'd be willing to appoint me in Quinn's position, specifically because I'm also on the Utah Homelessness Council, and having both of those views, she has told me she felt like that would be helpful in this board.
Makes sense.
Okay. Then we've got the Planning Commission. Dustin's been on that one for a year.
More than that.
More than that.
Yeah. I do have a question just about this specific appointment. I haven't had to do much in that role. I review like the stuff that comes out to us and watch the meetings, but one of the pointed criticisms that was part of this last election cycle was that one particular planning commissioner thought that they were not receiving like the support from the city that they needed, and I felt that might have been directed my way, because I am the liaison there. I've just always kind of wondered what my role there is, because it is strange, because it's like, you know, sitting in the back during the meeting, it's like, oh, there's a council member here who is like observing our work. You know, it's like when, you know, in school when you had like the principal was in the back watching your teacher. You know, not that, yeah, but I find that awkward. And I don't even know if that's like what is expected of me in that role or not. So I'm perfectly happy to continue serving. Like I said, I review information as it comes out via email and watch the planning commission meetings. But I don't know if there's something more I should be doing or more support I should be offering to those folks.
You know, during my tenure here, I mean, I think that's largely what it has been, in hopes, I think, a little bit too, that as issues come from the planning commission, there's clearly a staff perspective, but then also that a council member might be able to add in some things like that. But Adam or Nate, are there other things that would be useful, or maybe it's even something that used to be something, I know you guys are newer than I am, so maybe you don't know, but like something that would be a typical activity that hasn't been occurring that you think would be useful with regards to that position?
Immediately, I don't think anything that comes to mind. I can say in about half the areas that I've worked before, there's not been a city council liaison to the planning commission, and then in areas that are in places that there have been, it's been largely what Dustin explains, is just kind of be present, and if the planning commission has concerns, they can reach out to them directly, but also to kind of bring a perspective from the planning commission that maybe staff it doesn't articulate as well, if that makes sense. So, yeah.
It's just, you know, some of the things are issues that will eventually come before the city council. So, you know, sitting in the back, you know, you kind of have to maintain a completely stoic demeanor, because some things you might be like, oh my God, what are they talking about? Don't they know this or that and that? So it's just much different than any other committee that I serve on in that respect, that a lot of the stuff that I would be sitting there witnessing is stuff that's then going to come back to the city council for a final approval anyway. So it's just always been awkward for me to sit in the back and be like, as if I'm checking their work or something like that. But
I think that is the intent for that perspective side of things. Your perspective of what occurred in those meetings and being able to potentially bring that back to the council. I don't know if what you're saying is you're tired of it or...
No, I really just want, so like, you know, I'm on the Animal Services Board. Yeah. I know what my responsibilities are as the liaison to that board, which isn't on this list, by the way.
I recognize that now.
This one in particular, I just, again, don't exactly know what my responsibilities are to that Planning and Zoning Commission.
If no one wants to try to do it, and it remains, or whoever it is, I guess I should say, we can set up a meeting with Nate and Adam and myself and talk about it a little bit more and see if we could.
Or even the chair of the commission, like if they want to talk to me or meet with me, like I'm perfectly fine being as involved as the liaison to the commission as they want me to be, but I've made that conscious decision to like let them do their thing without the watchful eye of a city council member in the back of the room. And like I said, that didn't seem to be, at least from the perspective of one commissioner, that might not have thought that was all I should be doing.
Right.
So a clarification, I would be perfectly fine continuing on the Planning Commission as the liaison.
Okay. Boys and Girls Club, Dustin and the Mayor, Animal Services.
Oh, yeah, there it is.
Okay. As I was thinking back to it, I thought we missed that one too. Animal Services Advisory Committee, Dustin has been on that one. Are you still the chair?
Yes.
Yeah. When does that term end?
January, but I'm going to run for chair again.
Cool. Jordan River Commission, Dustin, Road Home Coordination Committee, the mayor, Utah Homelessness Council, the mayor, Community Development Block Grant Policy Committee, the mayor. These are all traditionally mayor positions. Air quality, and then the Canyons Education Foundation. So Quinn, I should have taken his name off of here, but I was letting you know he's going to continue to be on there as a resident, more or less, not an appointment by us. But my understanding is that they would still like there to be an official city council representative on the Canyons Education Foundation.
Yes, I'll just add, my wife, Nikki, was also just appointed to their board, or is being appointed this month, also in just like a parent capacity. And I know they have told me we can either appoint a third member from Midville as the official Midville City liaison, or they would also welcome us to appoint Quinn or Nikki to do that.
So I'm open to, and then do you have a better description of what the foundation does? They're the
nonprofit fundraising arm for the nonprofit of the district, where they do scholarships for students. They do, I think, when teachers need things in their classrooms, whether regular supplies or specialty supplies, they'll help raise money for that kind of stuff.
I would be interested in that if we don't want to just use the resident pack. That
I think we should stack the board.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think it would be really great. That's something that is up my alley. So
I think they're monthly. Maybe they're less than monthly.
They do some pretty fun events as well.
That they do.
And there's pictures to prove it.
The mayor is appointed to the Salt Lake County Board of Health, but that is a appointment by them, not an appointment by us, but I'm just on there so you know that he's on that. The Homeland Security Grants Council, I know Nate works very hard on that one. They don't do much. The Utah Community Action Board, trustees, the mayor. Then we get into this Main Street Facade Improvement Advisory Board. This is the one that, Arts Advisory Board, where Dustin is the Bingham Junction representative, Heidi is the citywide representative, and Bryant is the Main Street one. So that is the list. Did I forget, is there anything that you were a member of that I didn't get on this list? I've taken down the notes. We'll have another bite at it as an action item at the next meeting. We can make adjustments in that meeting if we need to. And then I will, and what I have is Heidi, alternate UIA, Bonnie on the audit committee, Bonnie, Utah League of Cities and Towns, and then Bonnie on Canyons Education.
And myself for Shelter the Homeless.
And yourself for Shelter the Homeless.
Okay. Don't write yourself when you do that. You might get confused when you present it the next time.
I'll be honest, I did have Mayor Shelter the Home, and I was like, what was that one again? I don't remember. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, our third and final discussion item for the night is discuss city-initiated request to amend Title 16 sections 17-2-4, 17-213, 17-216, 72-18, 72-19, 17-3-2, and 17-3-13, and to create Title 18 of the Midville City Municipal Code. Thanks for making me read that.
Thank you for reading that all. This is a code amendment that we're bringing before you. It basically was initiated due to Senate Bill 174 from last year's general legislative session, where the state legislature made changes in the law that required us to make substantial changes to our subdivision ordinance. As we reviewed it, we determined that we were going to do kind of a clean rewrite of the subdivision ordinance to address several issues, and we'll go over some of those. But the impetus is from that Senate Bill 174, which required a couple things, and so I'll go over those really quick. for those of you who have been on the council for a while, you've seen many subdivision approvals come to the council, and it often includes a public hearing where citizens come in and give input regarding the proposed subdivision, and those public hearings often have a feeling of a legislative action, but a subdivision application is an administrative action, meaning as long as all the boxes have been checked, your hands are tied, no matter what the public input is. And I think the state recognized that can be awkward and for you and for developers and all of that. And so they made changes and actually cut city councils out entirely from the subdivision approval process. So those will no longer be coming to you. And the Planning Commission is limited to just one public hearing and one review of the preliminary plat process. And they're not involved at all in the final plat approval process. Another issue that, and I guess as I'm going through all these, if your eyes glaze over, that's okay. But also, if you have questions, feel free to interrupt me, so you don't, forget before I get to the end. The list is a little bit long. I'll try and get through it quick, though. Another thing that was addressed was when an applicant turns in an application for a subdivision, some cities were taking too long to get back to them and were delaying the process, and some applicants were not providing appropriate applications. In other words, they were providing stuff that was incomplete based on the ordinance or based on engineering standards. And so the state stepped in and said, hey, these are the rules that you have to follow as part of the review process, and provided a shot clock for cities so that we're not allowed to sit on it for an unreasonable amount of time, and also provided rules for developers so that they can't require city staff to do all their engineering and code compliance for them. Another issue that came up, actually, where I came from in Orem, this was a really hot topic for a while, was what is a complete application? What is required in order for someone to be able to turn in an application and vest their rights in whatever subdivision or development? And so we were required to provide a list of material that developers can check off to know, once I've turned on all this, I know that I have turned in a complete application and my rights are vested. SB 174 also required more clear engineering standards for things such as public improvements that are built in subdivisions, roads, sewers, all those sorts of things. And then also created a new appeal process for disagreements regarding those engineering standards. As we went through it, there were some other things that we as staff felt needed to be changed that were quite substantive in the subdivision ordinance, which is why we kind of redid the whole thing instead of just throwing in the changes from Senate Bill 174. One is that we wanted to clarify the organization of the ordinances generally. It was fairly hard to read and was difficult for staff to implement in a consistent way, the way it was written. So we organized it to make it more clear that the process and the steps that a developer needs to go through in order to get their subdivision approved and recorded with the county. We eliminated some unused portions of the code. For example, in the code, it distinguishes between minor and major subdivisions. Even though if you read it carefully, there is no distinction, they're the same. So we eliminated stuff like that that was left over. We deleted some definitions such as sketch plat, which isn't used anywhere in the code, but was left over from a different ordinance that has since been replaced. We reviewed our subdivision ordinance within within the scope of state law generally. So besides Senate Bill 174, what within the state law regarding subdivisions and subdivision ordinances did we need to comply with, and made some changes regarding that. We created enforcement mechanisms for things that we felt would be useful, such as defining unlawful subdivisions, which would prevent people from creating nuisance strips or protection strips, and other lists of issues that come up. We created a process for conveying property to the city, and made it illegal to convey property to the city outside of those processes. So if someone has a useless piece of property, they can't just deed it over to the city, which does occasionally happen, and then we're on the hook for maintaining that. So those are essentially, that's the summary of the changes that we made. It's kind of high level. It's a fairly long ordinance, and there's a lot of detail in there. I encourage you, if you haven't yet, to read through it, or at least glance at it and see see the structure and the changes compared to what we currently have. Are there any questions or concerns about it?
I've got a question. I'm curious on the extent that planning has been involved with this, knowing that they'll be implementing much of this.
Yes, so we spent many hours with planning and engineering. All the folks back there, they're nodding their head. Elizabeth agrees with the many hours. Anyway, I think at one point I made her go through it line by line together. So yes, they've reviewed it, and it's been quite a team effort to get this together. Yep, they put in a lot of time.
Thank you.
I guess the question I have is, and again, it's like, okay, we have a subdivision coming up and a whole bunch of people don't like it. What's their alternative? Do they have any rights to?
Yeah, so they have essentially the same rights as they had before.
Which was, by the time they got to us, there was none, basically.
There's often not a lot that can be done, right? So as long as all the boxes are checked, then yeah, there isn't anything that they can do to prevent the subdivision from happening. Obviously, if they have information, evidence, whatever, maybe there's a law that was not noticed before, as part of the review, they could show up at the public hearing with the Planning Commission and express or provide written comments saying, hey, I don't think you're complying with the law, and so the application should be denied. But otherwise, yeah, their concerns, unfortunately, with zoning and planning is where citizen input is most helpful is at the stage where ordinances are being passed and no one's here, or where master plans are being passed and that sort of a thing. That's when it's best to get their input. But once those laws have been passed, obviously the property owner then has rights. And
I understand that.
Yep.
It's just the perception of our citizens is going to be like, we're not listening to what their concerns are.
Yeah, well,
that'll be the perception.
It will be. I think it is. I don't see that this necessarily changes that a whole lot, other than that there may be fewer public hearings where they can express their concerns. They'll only have the one before the Planning Commission rather than the 2 or 3 that were happening before.
And we do have the option of removing the public hearing altogether, that this becomes a completely administrative, that it's done by our staff, that they look at the criteria, and if they meet the criteria, then it just moves forward. And if that's something the council would like to do, we can remove the public hearing portion from this over the next 2 weeks, and then bring back to you without any public hearings altogether.
I think public hearings are important, but if there's no, it's just like, if I know I'm going to have a public hearing, but I know I'm going to go there and nothing's going to happen, then it becomes, our citizens get frustrated.
And I think there is a little bit of a disconnect about the purpose of what that hearing is. I think because people are so used to coming and feeling that every decision is a legislative decision, they feel like they can move what the outcome is going to be. In this particular case, the residents are an oversight body. They're not coming to change, the purpose is not to change the outcome as much as it is to ensure the outcome is fair based on what is on the law. So if we as staff messed up, that is their opportunity for them to call out those mistakes to make sure that we don't move forward with something that is otherwise illegal. But it is not to change, to vote up or down if they're in favor of a project.
But that's that's been the perception, and I'm sure it's still gonna be the perception, that they can do that, which they can't.
That's right, yeah. And like I said, I don't see that this will change that in any way, other than there will be fewer of those opportunities.
So as written, there would still be a public hearing.
Yes, so it was optional whether or not to involve the planning commission at all, and whether or not to have a public hearing at the planning commission hearing. And when I say public hearing, I'm referring specifically, right, to the opportunity for the public to come and make public comment.
And just to clarify, that's a public hearing for the planning commission, not for this body.
Correct, yeah. The city council has been cut out of the subdivision approval process entirely, and that was mandated by the state. That wasn't any decision that we made.
Do we have, I mean, to me, this is a really hard one for me, because I do think public input is really important, and also you're just setting it up for failure if people are coming here thinking they can change the outcome, and they can't. But with that said, it won't be us who's taking that scrutiny directly. It will be the planning commission. Have we gotten their feedback on this? If they think, at least our current planning commission thinks that it would be good to continue having public hearings on this or not?
So, they didn't provide a lot of input on this ordinance specifically. There has been a lot of discussion about public hearings generally, and the general impression that I get is that there's a bit of a split. Some of them don't like doing it because it does feel like a waste of time. Others feel like it's important because whether or not the outcome changes, some people still feel better about the process if they feel like they've been heard. And it also lends some legitimacy to the proceedings if they're at least aware by way of a hearing that something's happening and are able to provide oversight should something have been missed.
I can't remember now, with planning and zoning, do they have like this public comment? You know how we have a general public comment at the beginning, and then you can also comment if there's
On a specific item?
Yeah, on a specific item. Do they have that public comment?
No, I don't. Our planning commission does not hold those, just a general public comment at the beginning of the meeting.
And that's because of they're a specialized body, right? They don't have the authority you do to address the direction of the city. And so they receive the public comments on those specific public hearings.
That's fine. I just didn't know if that would funnel it, instead of having it, right at a certain action item or whatever they call it, if it would just be at the beginning. The reason why I like public comments, I mean, I get why everyone's frustrated in the moment and they're like, we can't do anything, blah, blah, blah. But I do think it helps to change future policies a lot of times, right? Like, 7 years ago, what sort of started it was, frankly, some bad policy decisions for me, on what they were going to do on the neighborhoods around tracks. And then we made like a TOD overlay and stuff that seemed to be better for the residents. I mean, there's no position that makes everyone happy, right? But because we heard so much about, hey, these townhomes that went up that are a nightmare. They couldn't change those ones, but they changed, some future ones.
Yeah.
Right. And then the townhome project that went in across the street, I think, is a little bit better than the previous one because of that, right? So I like the public comment. I know it's frustrating at the moment, but I do think it gives citizens the opportunity to, at least feel like their, voices are heard. And if the public, or, if the staff and the planning and zoning are paying attention, that can help guide future things. Because I think we do that here, right? It is frustrating. It's frustrating for them. It's frustrating for us when we can't, even if we agree, like, yeah, this is dumb. But, dumb doesn't mean we can say no.
Yeah.
So
I also think we've had some, may they be a little far between, but we've also had some where the comments have actually changed the planning, or the plan at the end of it. You know what I mean? You've had some developers that have come in and have heard what the people are saying and have decided to make the changes on their own. So I understand how the public comment can be confusing, but I do think it has some value to maintain.
I was split and you've both won me over. So when I get to vote on this in the next one, get that joke. Get that?
Please don't vote.
I won't, only if it's a tie.
I do wonder though, if developers are now armed with this information, that they don't necessarily have to take that input into consideration, knowing that it's, for lack of a better word, a public hearing for show only, and that they only have to sit and listen to it and then can go do the project as they want. I think in the past where we have been able to have developers listen to feedback from the audience, and then even though they weren't necessarily compelled to legally take those into consideration, most developers don't want to build a product that every neighbor hates. So we've had successes in the past, but those developers were under no obligation to implement those changes even at that moment. So this just further solidifies the fact that it is kind of a, everyone can come up and let us know what they think of it, but we can't do anything about it. And this makes that even more clear. So I don't know, it's a tough situation to be in. I certainly don't want to get rid of public hearings. I think that is a tough sell for our residents to say, oh yeah, we're just not doing that anymore. So, but yeah, I just wonder, like I said, if developers, now that they know, like, the legislature did this with you in mind, developers, if we're even going to have that kind of leverage anymore to say, like, hey, the people who live around this project hate what you're doing, will you change it? So I have some concerns about that, but looks like our hands are tied all the way around on this one. Like, we have to.
For the most part, yeah. In terms of, like I say, you guys, the city council, are completely unable to participate based on the state law, but it is your choice as to whether or not the planning commission participates and whether or not they have that public hearing. The way it's currently written, the way we did it is that, yes, planning commission does participate as much as they can, and they do their public hearing. Keeping in mind many of the concerns that have been expressed. Obviously the other side is it's much more efficient if there is no public hearing, and if the planning commission isn't involved. But I don't think that changes angry citizens' feelings anyway, right? If they'll just be angry and have to express that in some other forum, which may not be as productive. So, anyway, any other comments or concerns about it? Questions? This is a big, long one, and so that's why we came and brought it as a discussion item before and it is an action item. But
That's nice. That's good. All right.
That would not be.
I think they've made first contact.
We're good.
okay, great.
Okay.
Well, we think about it, and anyway, if there are any other concerns or questions, feel free to contact me.
And if we can, so the next time this comes forward, obviously this is a pretty lengthy discussion. If it's okay with your permission, whoever presents this, whether it's Aaron or myself, the next time we can just
I'm comfortable with that. I always, for the few people that watch these meetings, I always like to remind them if we discuss this more in depth at our last council meeting.
Yeah, you could,
As long-
I'd reference the date, tell them to go find the video.
That's good.
Okay. And then also, if I can express my appreciation for Aaron, this was a really heavy lift. And unfortunately, like many things the state does, it was under a timeline that wasn't of our choosing. So I really appreciate Aaron's, all of his work in coordinating with the planning staff and with Keith to get this all done. I really appreciate that in helping us meet this deadline.
Thank you, Aaron.
Just one other question. How does this, is it different from other cities as far as the actual subdivision?
That is a really good question, considering we are all trying to pass this at the same time. So unlike a lot of other bills or other types of things where we've been able to steal from other people, in this particular case, all of us are reinventing the wheel simultaneously to meet the state deadline. So I can't say completely how this will match with the certain functions, but certain things, like Aaron was saying, will be the same. Every city council in the state has been cut out. Everyone is under the same shot clocks for residential projects. And everyone has to have objective engineering standards and other things that are in place by February 1st.
I guess what my concern is we pass this, and then it starts to use it, and then we find out that there's some problems with it. And there might not be, but there very well could be.
Yes, there very well could be, and I've been following some other cities that have been passing these. We're largely in line with what others have done. I don't know of any that have completely cut out the Planning Commission as well. Most that I've followed, the Planning Commission is still involved with a public hearing. So we're, again, largely in line. Although, like you say, it's to be seen whether or not there are additional changes. I wouldn't be surprised if there are in the
So, and I
future.
guess what I'm saying is we're gonna depend on you to tell us, hey, something's not working here right. We start getting a lot of complaints and stuff, maybe there's ways we can tweak it to make it so that we don't get a lot of problems.
In as much as we can with what the state's
Yeah,
given us.
I understand that, but, and I understand why we're doing it and everything else, but I'm concerned that every time we pass a great big long list of something, sometimes there's these consequences that we didn't see coming.
For sure.
And this is part of the reason that you see so many amendments to Title 17, is as we were going through this, we were trying to anticipate areas where we were gonna have problems. And so we are human, we're not perfect. This is not a perfect ordinance by any means. But I will say, objectively speaking, this is substantially better than what we had before, even if we were not applying the state standards. What staff has worked on is something that I think we all agree is a significant step forward from what we were using before, that will be easier for staff to follow and implement, than in some cases ending up in these weird spots where things are ambiguous. And so we've tried to make it clear and denote more clarity of what are we doing at each step of this process.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we don't have a closed session tonight, so with that, I would ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
A motion is second. All in favor, please say aye.
Yes.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you. Does anybody need a break? I assume we'll just jump right into the RDA. Great. I need 20 seconds. 20. Great. Welcome, everybody. It's 7:57 p.m. I'll call this meeting to order. Rory, if you would call roll, please.
Yes, Board Member Glover.
Here.
Billings.
Here.
Gettle.
Here.
Brown.
Here.
And Robinson.
Okay, thank you. Moving to public comments. Any person wishing to comment on any item not otherwise scheduled for a public hearing on the agenda tonight may address the Redevelopment Agency of Midvale City at this point by stepping to the microphone and stating their name for the record. Do we have any public comments? Seeing none, we'll move into the consent agenda with just one item. Consider minutes of December 6, 2023. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that? Rory, you call roll, please.
Board Member Brown.
Yes.
Gettle.
Yes.
Glover.
Aye.
Billings.
Yes.
And Robinson.
Aye.
Okay, that passes. Thank you. Just one discussion item tonight. Discussion regarding amendments to the Midvale Main Business Loan Program, and I believe we'll hear from Nate.
Hello, this is a discussion item. I am Nate Rockwood, Assistant City Manager. This is a program that Kate has actually put together. She's feeling under the weather tonight, so I'm going to present it for you. This is a program that we put in place with the Main Street RDA. There's a lot of different programs that we've put in place to impact the different areas on Main Street that we want to see improved. So things like the upper floor housing, the facade program, the art programs. This is one that is very important because it is a small business loan program. So this is really getting at the heart of what we want to see on Main Street, which is getting the types of businesses that we want to activate the street, on the street, and then also getting a lot of these either underutilized or blighted buildings fixed and used and have small businesses in them that are activating the street. So this is a program that's been around for a little bit, since 2021. And since we've done it, there's only really been one business that took advantage of this, and that is the Pearl Theater. With all of these different programs that we're creating for Main Street, we're trying to tailor them as much as we can, but also give some flexibility in them, because every developer, every business owner is going to have different things that appeal to them and make the incentive work for them, whereas in other cases that incentive wouldn't work for another developer. As we've gone through this program, one of the things that we're always trying to evaluate is, like I said, this is one of the ones that I think is getting money on the street in a way that we want and really incentivizing it. So it's frustrating when we haven't had a lot of takers on this yet. And so when we get that, we go out and we talk with the owners of businesses, we talk with the developers, we talk with property owners, and we try to figure out what about this program can we fix so that it will help you do what you want to do with your property or with your business, but also get exactly what we want to see on the street that makes the Main Street a vibrant street that we all know it can be. And so Kate has gone out, I've gone out, all the different members of the RDA have gone out and kind of talked to business owners and property owners. And based on that, we're making some recommendations for some changes to these programs that we think will help the incentives be taken more advantage of and get exactly what we want on the street. So sort of in a summary, what we're doing here is as interest rates, when we first started this program, they were quite low. And so we had a small scale that we were working from. Interest rates have changed quite a bit in that amount of time, and there is quite a large scale that we can work from now. One of the things that we are doing is changing that scale, and also for either a business or a property owner that hits certain categories completely, where basically as we look at that, we say this is the ideal development that we want on the street. We're actually recommending that in certain situations
that, that the RDA offer 0% loans. And I think as we've talked with business owners, obviously, being able to borrow money for nothing.
They like that idea.
It appeals to them, but it also appeals to us because it gets us what we want. I mean, these loans really are a win-win situation for us, and you always have to remember they are loans. This money does come back into the RDA and gets revolved into the next business. So as much of that money that we can get on the street does a whole lot more good than it does sitting in the state trust account where it doesn't necessarily make a whole lot of money. And it certainly doesn't improve the Main Street. So one of the things that we decided when we looked at this, when we created this thing at first, we were saying these could be business loans, but they could also go to the property owners. And as we've started to work with some businesses and work with some of the property owners, what we're finding is that the criteria that makes sense for a property owner doesn't always make sense for a business owner. Same with the collateral that matches with it, same with some of the terms. And so it really became clear to us that let's split this program and let's have a pure business loan, which is always going to go to the business owners. And then let's have what we're calling an adaptive reuse loans, which are going to go towards the property owners. That allows us to kind of tailor the criteria that we're evaluating the loans on and make them much more complementary to what those different people are trying to do. So what we also did with that is we've changed some of the collateral requirements. They kind of go up quite a bit higher on the adaptive reuse. Sometimes easements are going to be used. And that just allows us to control what we're doing with these loans a little bit better. One of the things that we've decided to do when we had that small scale of where the prime rate was down in the 4% or less, we actually were adding a 1.5% to that and then letting them work down. The prime rate right now is 8.5%, so quite a bit higher. And adding that 1.5 to that 8.5, yeah, they work down into a better loan, but a lot of small businesses, an 8.5% loan is prohibitive to them. A 6% loan is still just as prohibitive to them. So taking that cap off and just saying we will start at the prime rate, and that allows us to work down to a little bit better of a loan, base rate for the loan, and then also the interest-free loans. So the way that the interest-free loans would work is the structure of these things are still the same. So for a business, there's loans that are under $25,000. And then there's loans that are over $25,000. The maximum loan that we go up to is $250,000. But we have all of these categories that they're getting points on that we're determining how low their rate goes. Now, if with a business loan, they get the full 10 out of 10 for economic impact, 10 out of 10 for adaptive reuse or historic preservation, 10 out of 10 for job creation, and 10 out of 10 for street activation. So they're getting 40 points in those. Then they have to get another 20 points in any of these other categories. But if they hit the full amount in those key target areas, then that's when we say this qualifies you for a 0% loan. We think that makes a whole lot of sense. What we've also done within some of those categories, and I'll get to this in just a second, is we've actually put a little more definition around what those categories mean and what type of businesses we're really looking for. And we're really starting to get kind of very specific on this. For the adaptive reuse loans for the 0%, it's the same thing. The minimum score is a little bit different, 55 points rather than 60. That's because there's a little less categories in the adaptive reuse, but they need to get full points under economic impact, under historic preservation, under beautification, and under street activation. So if they're hitting those things, plus they're getting another 15 points in other categories,
we say that they are doing exactly what we want to see them do with their building. So this is typically going to be a very underutilized building or even a blighted building. So any questions on, well, let me go into this thing first. So what we did is in the old, under the original loan program, we said in a very generic way, things that are complementary to the street. Now that was very subjective and we don't really know what that means. What we've done now is we've created this business category list. Now these are just the headings of each one of these things. The full list actually has a bunch of examples of very specific types of things that fit under that category. That said, this is just a guide. Just because your individual business type might not fit on there, we have such a comprehensive guide here. The idea is we could say, yeah, it's not on the list, but it very clearly fits into this category and is similar to these types of things. And then also, it'll help us when something really isn't contributing to the street, for us to look at this list and say, this is why it's not fitting into these categories. And so several of the selection criteria will say, how does the adaptive reuse or how does the street activation fit into this list of types of businesses that we're looking for on the street? And we'll continue to add to that list if there's things that need, but it is quite comprehensive. Then the last thing I was going to jump to is money. But before I jump to that, any questions that the council has on the program? I went through it pretty quick. It's still somewhat of a complicated program. The other thing about it is anything, whether it's in the adaptive reuse loans or the small business loan, any of the loans over $25,000 are always going to come to the RDA board for approval, based on recommendations for staff, so that nothing is just going to fly through. It'll always come to you, and you can make sure that it makes sense and is what we want. There's a lot of information. Any questions that the board has?
I do have one. I noticed in this, there's no definition of historical buildings, of what would, and I see some value in having a scale on that of what would count as historical and what wouldn't, and what we would like to see preserved. But I would also think that if somebody's applying for this, they would say, I don't know, you'd lean into, yeah, my job is going to bring permanent job creation, so let me explain that. But if somebody doesn't think, because when I think historical, I think of like historical registry.
Yeah.
And so if you have a building, you're like, well, it's not on a historical registry, so I guess I'm just not going to go for that, even though you could, because we don't actually define it. I mean, so I guess I'm wondering if there's been talk about defining that or putting something there to help an applicant understand, like, we don't actually have that defined. So if you think it counts, then go for it and convince us.
And under that, if you look at the thing, so it says to promote historic character of a project area through preservation of existing and historic buildings, and then it further says the project will preserve and rehabilitate architecturally or historically significant buildings or landmarks. Structures must be deemed to be historically significant and rehabilitated according to historic preservation or equivalent standards. What we don't want to do there, and what is, once you designate your building as a historic building, the ability for you to change it and to do an adaptive reuse on it becomes really, really prohibitive, because it gets into, you need to use this type of material, it needs to be this type of, it gets so not only prohibitive, but it gets so cost prohibitive that you really have to go out for grants and do all sorts of things like that. Right now we don't, on the main part of Main Street, we don't have anything historically designated. Now the owners could designate something, but we don't really want to do that to them. We would rather say, we have lots of photos, we have lots of different ideas of what the historic character of that building is. If you're presenting something to us that captures that historic feel or that look, I mean, I think it's a good example was the one that you just approved for the facade of the Midvale Bank on the corner of Center and Main. That is not a historic that building is not being returned to its historic state, but it's going to look very historic, and they're going to capture that historic character that we want. So that's where we're kind of intentionally not crossing that line, where we don't want to say, in order for it to be adaptive reuse, you have to hit a 10 on historic preservation, and that means you have to get it designated on the historic registry of the state. We don't want to force someone to do that. So that's why we're kind of leaving it a little bit vague there.
And we don't want that, right? Because like the Sandy area, that every other home seems to have it.
Yeah.
And now there's just nothing going on there at all.
It becomes, like I said, it becomes very prohibitive to
do anything.
I see what you're saying about not wanting it. I guess I would just want to make sure that that's clear to an applicant, because even when whatever sentence you just chose out of here that said it's something standard in there, like it still feels like in the language that there is a definition of historic, but we don't have that. And again, I don't want an applicant to see this and say, well, mine's not it's not on a registry, so I don't think it counts.
So that's something, I mean, that's, as we've gone through this is one of the criteria that I've looked at, and even today, me and Kate were going over it on the phone, and I was looking at the slide and going, wait, we're requiring them to do the historic preservation? And I had to go back and read this again and go, okay, no, we have enough wiggle room in there. But I completely see what you're saying, so let us go back and rework that historic preservation and see if we could come up with a definition, a looser definition that makes sense and doesn't.
I was just, even if it's vague, or even if there's just something to convey to an applicant, if like, we don't have this defined, something, just to me as reading it seems like there is a definition, but we don't have one.
Right. And I think a lot of historic preservationists would come in and say, you can't use the word historic preservation unless you're actually doing historic preservation. So let us just retool that category heading and those categories for when we bring it back to you, so that it's a little more clear that historic character, I don't know what it's going to be, but it'll be something that that makes it a little bit more clear that we're looking for the historic look, but not necessarily looking for a historic designation. Does that make sense? Does that work? Okay. I am after working for Park City for 12 years, historic preservation means historic preservation there. It means the same beam and the same brick. And that is so prohibitive sometimes that buildings actually sit vacant because nobody can actually make them work, even though they're a space that should be being rented for some of the highest cost per square foot in the state, so I totally get that.
We could see the PTSD in your eyes when we mentioned that.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I appreciate the work and working on changing all this. The one thing that always worries me with this now is, okay, you've talked to these business owners and here's some changes and blah, blah, blah. Are they just going to all say, they're not going to use this and then be like, now we want this,
No.
right? Like, before there was a benefit, and I know it might have been prohibitive, it might not have been the best benefit. So, are they shopping us? Are they pushing us? And that's what worries me about this, is we're going to put a bunch of time into this. You're going to be like, okay, this new version now sat for 2 years or 3 years. No one's using it. So now let's do this. And I don't mind trying. I just think, hopefully they're not abusing your time, so to speak, right? Like they're just taking advantage of how much more can we get?
No, yeah, so we spent, like I said, we actually spent a lot of time, not just with one or two developers, but with several of them, some of the even like very difficult ones in terms of like wanting to do a city program. And yeah, there were some of them that would say, well, you should just give us grants. I mean, why are you doing loans? Just give us grants. And it's like,
everything. Yep.
that's not where we're gonna go. But we actually have worked, and with this one, when Kate brings this back, she's actually gonna bring it back with some actual applicants, so because we've been working with them. So we're gonna get, on the very first go, I think we're gonna get at least 3 applications for it. And then we have 2 other properties, different developers, that are actually for the first time saying, oh, this actually makes sense for me to do, and I'm gonna do this, and they're waiting for this to get approved so that they'll come back. And I think all of them, when you start looking at how do they hit these full scores on some of these things, they're very impressive businesses.
Okay.
And in terms of that, I'm saving this for a question, but I'm going to use it anyways. In terms of that, how far do you push and how far do you push back?
Right.
I'll always say we're trying to create these nodes, and we hope that all the other cities in the valley and in the state create different interesting nodes, because I think that, that whole, I don't know how the saying goes. What is it? A high tide floats all ships, or something like that. I mean, I think that's legitimately a thing that's happening. As Midvale gets better, and as all these different areas, whether they're arts and culture districts or whether they're main streets or other types of areas, that all helps everywhere, and that creates a culture that thrives on that. That said, with some of these businesses, we still are legitimately competing with these different areas. There's businesses that have a location in downtown Salt Lake, and they might want to expand, and they're going to look at all these different areas, and we're going to want to have incentives that can capture them. So we want to do them as good as we can, but at the same time, a good example, and Kate brought this up because she researched this quite a lot, is the Granary District. They have a similar small business program, but it's based on forgivable loans. So there is things that go even farther than this with what we're presenting now, and talking with especially some of these entrepreneur business owners that are looking for second or third locations. This seems to be getting them very, very interested in it. So we're excited to be able to bring back some of those so that you can see that we're actually landing some pretty good fish for the street.
That's great, and having the applicants already is a positive for me. It just felt like, oh, there's nothing, and now we're trying, and I think it's great that you are. So that's not negative towards you guys. It's mostly I'm like, oh, they're just going to try to. Now, Nate, let's try this.
Well, and we will keep trying, and we'll keep doing different things, but at this point, we finally got with the court project, the upper floor housing, which was one that we worked a lot on, and we're afraid, that one, there's very few possibilities of where that could happen, but it's great to have one, and we have more developers thinking about doing that. And then the facade, we've had one, we have 2 others that I believe are applying now for the facade, so that's finally working, and then like I said, this will come back with things working, so long as those programs are working, and we keep funding them, I think we'll just slowly make changes as we need them, but I think this is a positive change. So just as a reminder, this is being funded through the Bingham Junction project area, $1.5 million. So far, only one for $250,000, which was the Pearl. Both of these programs, even though we're splitting them, they're still going to use that same funding source, so that's still be both coming out of that same pot of money, the $1.5 million. As these are successful, there definitely is the possibility of using more funding from the Bingham project area to fund additional loans. So we're not capped out at 1.5. Our budget is, but we have the ability to raise that if this program's really working. And the great thing again about this is it's a loan. So the money comes back. We're really just taking our money, and instead of investing it in the Treasury Fund, the State Treasury Fund, we're investing it in ourselves on the street, which is a much better way to use your money. That is the end of the presentation.
I'll just quickly say appreciate all the work going into this. I know in some of the Main Street Business Alliance meetings I've attended, they have brought up, there has been some meetings where feedback has been given on these programs we offer, and I can see that this already is addressing some of those concerns. So hopefully, to Councilmember Brown's point of will this work, that I see the work that's going in to help address that, and hopefully it's successful.
Great,
Thanks. Okay, with that, entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor, say aye.
Yes.
We're adjourned, thank you.